everybody, this is Johnny S with another R6 vlog. In today's topic we're going to discuss modern dating in 2025. Before we do so, I need to just a couple of updates, a couple of claims. There are going to be some changes in my channel in relation to the categorization of my videos and the playlists. Initially, when I started this channel, I began with the concept of creating a general sort of vlog category in order for me to discuss many things, including motorcycle related, let's say, things. Then I tried to separate those into different categories to keep things short. I'm going to change the categorization to R6 vlogs, not motor vlogs. It's going to be a general category, and there's not going to be Johnny S vlogs. So it's just going to be one playlist. All the videos are going to be there. The only differentiation is going to be between the games and the rest of the topics, which is the general category. So in today's topic, I'll try to keep it as short as possible, but there are quite a few of information, let's say, which need to be mentioned. If you're going to ask me the reason why you're doing this, I do think it's one of the important issues. I consider it to be important, mostly as a father rather than a young person in the actual dating community. Obviously, I'm 44 years old, married, so I'm outside of that, let's say. I'm living in Greece, in the case that people do not know. I'm 44 years old. I am a father with a young kid, and that might also be possibly why some of these things tend to grab my attention. I do have a couple of notes that I want to go through in order not to lose track of the things that I wanted to mention. The point of the video is not to discriminate against anybody, be offensive to anybody, put down or put up specific people, but I am going to state both negative and positive things, meaning that my intent is not to offend, but it's unavoidable. People will get offended because, especially people tend to see some of the things that I mentioned them doing, they are going to get offended. In these cases, please try to be civil. Don't go into the process. I know I've said this many times, and I don't think it will make a difference, but people will go ahead. Don't go into the process of attacking the content creator, or mentioning specific things in a nihilistic, redirecting kind of outside of the topic of discussion, let's say, in order to just personally attack someone. I think it's not good. It doesn't add value to anything. So with that being said, let's get into today's topic, which is going to be let's call it modern dating, okay, the dating scene, whatever you want to call it. I believe that it's something which doesn't affect Greece, and since I'm in Greece, I'm going to talk about it in not totally, but not in the way that it affects I'm not going to call it America, I'm going to call it Anglo-Saxon countries. This includes UK, US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Anglo-Saxon tend to have sort of this type of behaviors, let's say. I don't want to say Western, Eastern and all that, because they're all over the place. And because it's not as evident in Greece, these things that I have seen usually are from the social media. But again, I think it is an important topic, and I think it is a global issue. So even though, if you ask me, in Greece, why you don't have this problem, I would say it's more because we tend to be a little bit heavier on when it comes to the ethical. You might call us old style. You know what I mean? A little bit more traditional, a little bit stronger notion of what the family is, the nuclear family, which is being destroyed in most of the Anglo-Saxon countries lately. Hence why it might not be a problem. But could it be possibly a problem in the future if left unchecked? I do believe so, that could be the case. So I will try to keep the notion as positive as possible. The point is not like to depress everybody, but it is a depressing sort of, let's say, issue, at least because of the current state, which I do think it's a little bit tragic. It's out of all the years, I think modern dating is the worst that it has ever been. You know what I mean? At least when compared to myself, when I compare it to others speaking about it, and unfortunately I don't think it's in a good place at all. This stands both for females and males. I will say 80% fault, not 80, let's say 70% fault. I will say it's more on the women's side, and let's say 30% is on the men's side. again, without me wanting to, like I said, take sides on the matter, I try to be as much as unbiased as I can. But I do believe that there's a bigger fault on the women. Women are a lot more social creatures. They dictate the market a lot, the consumer market a lot. If you ask me, is it done on purpose? Again, I know I'm going to be labeled as a conspiracy theorist, okay, but I do think that specific agendas are pushing, and that these things are not off by luck. And not because of the silly notion that there's a big guy who's spinning his mustache with an evil, hatching an evil plan against us. There's benefits, there's economical, financial benefits, and in order for some people to benefit, they are willing to sacrifice ethics, morals, and so forth. If you think that this is the case, I think that you can do something about it. Because it might be a well-known fact and not talk about it, I'm not all for that. There are many things that you can do. To say that it is the way it is and left it unchecked, I think it's not helpful to anyone. So if you do want to make a difference, and I think we all can make a difference, possibly not me, let's say I'm putting myself a little bit outside of that because I'm not in the dating scene, but me speaking and advocating for specific behaviors and stuff might be my, let's say, part in this, you know what I mean, to influence, if I can, as much as I can. So I do believe that there's things that are that can be done. I think there's faults on both sides. Women having the biggest piece of the pie, let's say, with a lot of modern feministical tendencies which are really deteriorated over the years and are not as equality driven as people think, at least when it comes to hunting for outcome rather than opportunity. So equality of outcome is something that I think has been degenerated a little bit, but also males having a lot of, let's say, incompetency issues, commitment issues, many things as such. So they're both at fault, let's say, and like, you know, it takes two to tango. You can't blame one without the other. I will say, if you ask me what's wrong with it, I'll put a couple of categories. I have tried to break it down a little bit in my mind and based on things that I've seen. I will say the first one is mental disorder, and on the mental disorder I want to specify and I want to generalize a little bit, which is not just on the mental, which means on the mind. I'm also including on that psychological. So mental disorders, psychological disorders, things which are, you're not in a healthy state of mind, let's say, which reflect also on the dating stage, because we're talking about individuals here, you know what I mean? We're talking about the two genders, males and females, and we're talking about how these affect. If you're not good with yourself, let's say, it's going to reflect. It's going to reflect for sure. Egotism, I will say, is another big one. And egotism, I'm going to put selfishness, I'm going to put narcissism, nihilism, all these things. I do think they relate in some way. It plays a huge reason. Another one I would say is materialism, being overly focused on money, the goods that we have. 2025, there's like having an expensive car, expensive looking good, outside appearances, materialism, all that. I think that also does not help. And the last one that I will say is purpose. There's a lack of purpose, unfortunately. This is more towards the man, but it's for, in general, it can be for both for the, you know, for both for women and men. But there's a lack of purpose. And when I say purpose, I tend to mean more higher purpose. You know what I mean? And in that notion, spiritualism, not just spiritualism / religion, let's call it, spiritualism, religion, the belief of something greater existing outside of thyself, I will say. A lack of that is also plays a role, because not believing something greater than yourself kind of minimizes your purpose, your higher purpose, let's say, and not having purpose can in many cases lead you to having nihilistic tendencies, that nothing really matters, and just being on drift, you know what I mean? Indications of this, there are many indications that I've seen. Obviously, like I've said, 90% is on social media and a few on real life, but if I had to give an example, I would say that I've seen a lot of comments which are made and a lot of mental stance towards people which have sexist tendencies. And when I say sexist, I mean anything that has to do with you considering your gender to be above the opposite gender. I think that is not a good thing, and it does become evident when, like, I'm going to give an example. Let's say for the guys, when a guy is overtly advertising his alpha maleness, I'm going to try to stray away from masculine toxicity and all that. I don't believe that there's that toxicity and masculinity should be in the same sentence, but I would say overly alpha. You know what I mean? If you're a guy that needs to call yourself an alpha male, you're not really an alpha male. Actions speak louder than words. There are a lot of guys which demote women. They think of them less, and there's a lot of women which do the same thing on the guys. The women, they usually do it in a different manner. One of the famous comments is when a lot of people ask women, you know, what do you bring to the table, and they're dumbfounded. They're looking around each other. That is a deeper indication of, let's say, egotistical selfishness and a little bit of sexism. I mean, if you're putting yourself up on a pedestal and that you're always the prize, you don't need to bring it to the table, that is kind of sexist, you know what I mean? So I would say that is also one of the examples, let's say, of the problems that we have. And another thing that I would say, and this is why I'm putting more weight towards the females, let's say, is that women usually tend to, when they're talking about career oriented, which I'm not against, you know what I mean, I'm all for it, finding purpose, having a healthy lifestyle, you know what I mean, having a hobby, having a career, having interests, having education, like, these are good things, but there needs to be a measure in all things, you know what I mean, you can't go overboard on that. Usually there's a lot of, and this is a generalization, but there's a lot of, let's say the majority of women which are focused on, I can make my own, you know what I mean, when you hear that, I can make my own, I can support myself. A guy can support himself also, but a guy is also providing. So when a woman says that, she's only thinking about her. So her paycheck is for her and for her alone. That's selfish. That's sexist. That's egotistical. That's, I don't give a shit about anybody else but myself. How can that go wrong? And I've seen it go wrong. Let's take a hypothetical scenario. A woman is married, in a loving relationship, they have 2-3 kids with a guy, and something goes wrong, the guy dies. So she becomes a widow with 3 kids. She does not remarry for reason A, B, C, D, whatever. And then she gets a slap of reality that her money is not for her. So I can take care of myself. She gotta take care of her kids. There's many circumstances when things go bad. And when I say bad, I mean neglecting. There's been cases of neglection, there's been cases of suicidal, there's, you know, when you're living your life in a specific way and you haven't considered the alternative, and then reality really slaps you across the face, it can be really difficult to come in terms and cope with that possibility that you might have not let's say as a correct stance against life as you thought you might have had. So these are a couple of the examples, and I think many of us have seen this. How can we fix it, or can we fix it? I would say yeah, we can fix it for sure. There's many things that we could do. If I will say where to begin with, I will say try to understand that a difference is not a weakness. Being different than the opposite gender is not a weakness. Me being a male and having physical muscular strength does not mean that the opposite sex is less than me. It just means that they're not as physically strong as I am. accepting this and not feeling demoted or not feeling less, or also you not considering the opposite sex less, I would say is one of the most, the first thing, the most important things. Understand that you are different, that we are all different, and that these differences does not mean, you know, that you're weaker. There's a lot of tendencies, especially from the females. That's why I'm saying most of these things are, let's say, more on the women's side, let's say, fault, but without me trying to put them down. You know, I mean, we're all at fault here. It does tend from their sort of perspective that they have this kind of tendency to feel weaker, and usually it relates to the physical strength. I'll give an example. I saw one of the documentaries which was talking about how strong the female organism is when it comes to the neurological sort of makeups of the female. And one of the examples that was given, there was a car, a 1.5 something ton car, suspended from a nerve which exists in a woman's stomach, and they were comparing how neurological superior females are to males in order for them to withstand the pain of pregnancy, in order for their bellies to protect the embryo. That to me was amazing. It's like a different type of strength. It doesn't mean that because I can open a jar, I'm better than you. It's not better, it's not less, it's just different type of strength. So I think that's one of the, and I am taking a little bit more time trying to emphasize that, because I do think that's the most, let's say, important sort of thing. Another thing obviously that I mentioned is stop being egotistical, stop thinking about yourself only. Women, like I explained, mostly tend to do this, but men also get to do this. You know, I mean, they think of themselves and only on themselves. Another thing that I would say is try to understand the opposite gender. Try to understand the opposite gender in a sense that, and again, usually guys tend to do this more because we are called to impress, let's say, the women mostly on outside of physical parameters, whereas the females, because they are by nature more attractive, physically at least, they tend to be more easily approached, let's say, by males, and therefore many of them do not go into the process to understand what is appealing to the opposite sex. Try to understand these things, and I'm saying this mostly for women. This whole video is mostly targeted for the younger ages, let's say. Married guys don't play a role, but there are also married guys, are older guys which are single, you know what I mean. But okay, this is mostly for the younger generation, let's say, and trying to just speak my mind on some things and possibly offer a little bit of value. Try to understand the opposite gender. Try to understand the difficulties, what's appealing to them, what's attractive to them, and you understanding this will also make you be more desirable, be more understanding in general, and less egotistical. You know what I mean? So you're with one sort of approach and attempt, you're solving multiple issues, let's say. Just to give an understanding, since we're talking more, I'm directing this towards the females. Think about what it means to be a provider from the guy's perspective. You know what I mean? He does not really care if his woman is making a lot of money and stuff, because that's something that innately he's doing himself. At least on a male that has a purpose in life, because on a male that is not incompetent, and on a male that does have a higher purpose, let's say, because that is also another problem that a lot of males do not do this. Think about what it means to be a provider. I mean, to be a provider means, like, I'll give an example. Let's say a guy is like 20. Okay, he's already thought of, how can I be more attractive to women? Should I get a car? Should I be independent of my family? It's not a nice look to be living with my parents. So a guy has already thought about these things. A proper guy, that is, so he's kind of become more, let's say, he's become more independent, he's become more financially stable to provide. He's thinking of, can I take my girl out, and so forth. So he's doing all these things, and in order for him to do this, think about that he also has to cover his needs. So when a woman turns around and says, I can make my own, I can support myself. The guy's already done that. For somebody to be a provider, it means he's already done what you're saying you're doing. So he's already found the job that he can provide his own hobbies, his lifestyle. Then he's taking it a step further, which means how can I be attractive? What are the tendencies which make me attractive from the females? He's accomplished that, and then he goes even further. You know what I mean? Can I provide? Can I support a family of 1, 2, 3 children? Not only that, but then he thinks about long-term wise. Can I put some money on the side so that they can be inherited by my children, by my wife, by whatever? A guy will think about these things. At least a guy that has a purpose, like I said. A guy will think about, just giving examples, random examples. How can I have a good life insurance in case, you know, knock on wood, something happens to me, that, you know, the people that I leave behind. So a guy is innately thinking of that, and usually females do not go into that process unless they have some sort of a mishap in their life. And I will advise that do not let it go to that stage before you start thinking of, you know, how can I do things and how can I, you know. So that's another one of the things. And another, possibly the last one I will say is, because I mentioned on other videos, I'm not going to spend too much time to it, is don't be promiscuous. This goes both for men and for women. Don't be promiscuous. It helps nobody. It doesn't help your experience. It doesn't help anybody. Try not to wear down your soul. Try not to, you know, it doesn't help. Try to be more, let's say, loving, be more focused, less on the material, the flesh, the less lustful, you know what I mean, and more loving. And since I've mentioned loving, another thing that I do want to mention is that I do see a lot of notions which they talk about being love being transactional. I don't agree with that. Romantic love can be transactional, but I do think that in today's age we've lost the meaning of love. Love as the pure essence and the meaning of love, the creative love that God had for us, you know what I mean, the love of just pure love, you know what I mean. People say that unconditional love only exists on dogs and on babies. I believe unconditional love can and should exist on all matters. When you see a person, when you see your man and you admire him, you feel connected to him, you fall in love with his character, his appearance, his persona, who he is, his existence, and then you take it a step further, and in order for you to show this, let's say, appreciation and to build on top of that base love, then you also show your romantic love. So that is something that I've seen a lot of times, because, you know, guys tend to say that, you know, should women be obligated to provide sex and so forth. It's not an obligation. It's not a transaction. It's not give me something, should I do it. You should by yourself want to do it. If you get into a certain stage and age in your life that you've changed and you're not so much passionate, let's say, in the love, your libido has gone down or whatever, these things and these changes can happen and do happen. In those cases, try to revitalize your relationship, try to find more things, try to investigate why this is happening. It can be a temporary thing, it can be a long-term thing, but there should not be any, let's say, transactional or any conditions on you loving. I do this for you, you do that for me. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. If I stop doing that, what's going to happen? You're going to stop loving me? Like, that's a little bit silly, at least on my perception. And if you do leave these things unchecked, as I said previously, it can lead to many different things. This is most of the things that I want to mention. I just want to mention, discuss, and possibly offer sort of like an overview of what the modern dating is like, at least from my and many people's perspectives. I'll advise everybody not to go down that path. What can happen? You can, you know, if you leave this unchecked, it can go worse. It's already, I believe, on a tragic point. It can lead to unhappiness, having no purpose, feeling like adrift, unfulfilled, lonely, just feeling as if you just wasted your life. And usually on a younger age, you're not going to feel these things. Usually when people get to an older stage, they were overly focused on their career, they were overly self-driven, and then get to a stage where they're just by themselves. Why? Because they served themselves. You know what I mean? They never served anything else other than themselves. Try not to do that. Try not to do that, and because if you're going to get to that stage, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very painful, let's say, because you do have to come in terms with the possibility that, whoa, were my choices in life not the right choices? So it's best off if you think about these things earlier in life. And I know that hormones are driving you crazy. I understand, I've been through this. Try to keep it in check. So anyway, that's pretty much all that I wanted to mention. I would like to thank everybody for your time. If you do disagree, please do leave a comment, subscribe, like I said, it's not the main purpose of the channel, but it does help to be as much engaging as possible, and it is the point, and it is also something which is, let's say, satisfactory, gives me satisfaction when I say this, obviously in a civil manner. Okay, so anyway, I'd like to thank everybody. I hope you have a good day, and I'll bid you goodbye.